Hi, this is part 3 of our final review. Right now we're working on loops, and this is another set of questions about for loops. So here's the code, and the questions require you to understand the code and answer questions about it. So the first question is, if the user puts 4 in the text box, how many times does the loop run? Well, okay, we read the value from the text box and set limit to be that number. And then we're going to do for j equals 1 to limit. So j will take on values 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 different values, so 4. And that is C. What gets printed when j equals 1? Well, we start with sum equal 2. Now when j equals 1, this one's a little tricky. The first thing that happens is we print the sum. We haven't changed it yet, so we'll print a 2. So that'll be part C, answer C. Now notice that we then add 4 to it. So the next time we start the loop, the sum will be 6. And so for the value that gets printed when j equals 2, because of that, the answer is 6. Also C. Okay. And then after we print that 6, we're going to add another 4. So the next time when j equals 3, when we enter the loop, sum will equal 10. And that's when j equals 3, entering the loop, sum equals 10. We print the 10 and add 4. So then the next time when we enter the loop, the sum will equal 14. And that's what will print. That's the last one that gets printed. But we then add 4 again, so when we exit the loop, the value of the sum will actually be 18. Now, this is an important distinction between what's getting printed and what's the final value of sum when you finish the loop. It has to do with the order of these statements. So if you don't understand this, I strongly suggest that you step through the code and watch how it behaves. Change the value of limit, see if you can answer questions like this, change what happens in the loop, and see if you can figure it out. This is the best way to study, really, if you have trouble with these, is to try tweaking the question a little and then practicing with it. Okay, next set of questions. Now this one has a while loop. So, what we're doing here, we're reading in the limit value, setting j, do while j is greater than or equal to 0, and each time we do the loop, we subtract 1 from j. So j can go down, right, in value until it hits 0. Okay, so the first question says, if the user puts a 10 in the list box, what is printed in the text box rather? What's printed in the list box? Now, this isn't multiple choice, but let's just talk about what happens. The first time we come in, well, j will be 10, so we're going to print the 10. And then j equals j minus 1, so the next time it's 9, we'll print the 9, and then the 8, and we'll keep on going, printing the numbers till we get down to 1 and then 0, and then finally it will finish the loop when j equals 0, and then it'll print blast off. Should have been a 10. Okay. Sorry. No, that's right. It's a 1 and a 0. Okay, and then blast off, which I don't quite have room to put here. Okay, for 1, well, we start with j equals 1, so we'll get the 1, then the 0, excuse me, and then the blast off. What if it's 0? Well, then we're going to have the limit be 0, so j becomes 0. 0 is greater than or equal to 0, so we'll do the loop one time, we'll print the 0, and then we'll be done with the loop and we'll do the blast off. Now suppose I change it. So instead of saying j greater than or equal to 0, it says j greater than or equal to 1. If the user puts 5 in the text box, what is printed in the list box? So, okay, in that case, it's still going to start with j equal 5 and print the j. So we'll get 5, Then j is j minus 1. We'll get 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. No 0. Why not? Because we stop. The last value we can do is j equals 1, and then when j equals 0, we're not going to do the loop anymore. So then we'll get our blast off. Whoops. I get my fingers on the right keys here. Blast. Okay. Now, what if I left out the line j equals j minus 1, and the user put a 5 in the text box? What would happen when I run the program? Well, you'll start with j equal 5. You'll print the 5. This line isn't there, so j is still 5. Print another 5, another 5, another 5, another 5. We have an infinite loop. Remember, with a while loop, that's a danger you have to worry about, and you always have to be doing something within the while loop that will eventually cause it to stop. Okay, now suppose I change j equal j minus 1 to j equal j plus 1. Well, now I am changing j inside the loop, but the wrong way, right? Because first it's 5, then it's 6, then it's 7. It'll always be greater than or equal to 1, at least logically speaking. So we'll again get an infinite loop. So you can say infinite loop, you can say the program will crash eventually, whatever you want. Infinite loop is probably the best answer here, even though of course it's not really infinite. At some point something will break down. Okay, so here's another subprocedure with a while loop. So this time we're reading our limit again from a text box. We have a value that we set to 0, and then we do this while j is less than or equal to limit. So j starts at 1, and val becomes val plus 5 times j. Now, if limit is 3, the first question is how many items are printed? And this is a good way to analyze these loops. You know, you should ask yourself, first of all, what values of the control variable, whether it's a for loop or a while loop, usually we're using a control variable in these kind of examples, and what values will it go through. So here, if limit is 3, we start j at 1, and we add 1 each time. So we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. That's 3 values. So 3 items will get printed because it prints 1 every time. So my answer here is 3, which is C. Now when j equals 1, what gets added to val? Well, look, it's 5 times j. If j is 1, it's going to be 5. So that's answer C. All right, next. What gets printed when j equals 1? Well, when j equals 1, we start with val 0, then we're adding 5 to it, so val becomes 5, and then we print it. So what gets printed when j equals 1 is the 5. C. Okay. When j equals 2, what gets added to val? Well, j is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. So we're adding 10. Okay, so what's val going to become? It was already 5. We're adding 10, so it'll be 15. So the answer of what gets added to val is D, 10. And what gets printed is D, 15. Okay, what's the final value that gets printed? So here you have to ask yourself, well, that's when j equals 3. What am I adding to val? 5 times 3, it's 15. So what's going to get printed? Well, 15, and remember it was 15 already, so 30. And that is also D. Okay, consider the following subprocedure. This one's got a nested loop, right? The inner loop is on K, the outer loop is on J. And it's one of the kind where we're building up a row of characters. So first of all, if length and height are both equal and the character is an asterisk, what gets printed? Sorry, they both equal 1. Well, if they both equal 1, then the outer loop only goes 1 time. So we're only going to get 1 row printed. And the inner loop also goes 1 time. So we're only going to get 1 character put onto that first row. So the answer is B. Now, if the length is 5 and the height is 1, what gets printed? Well, the length controls the inner loop, which controls how long the row is. So this means each row will have 5 asterisks. And with the height being 1, we're just going to do one row. So we're going to get one row of 5 stars, D. Okay, now if length is 5 and height is 3, what gets printed? Well, if length is 5, we're still getting 5 stars in a row. But now height is 3, so we'll do the outer loop 3 times. Each time we build a row of 5 stars. So we're going to get 3 rows of 5 stars, and that's E. Oops. Okay. All right, these are about arrays. Every element of an array must have the same data type. That is true. Every element of an array must be an integer. No, you can have arrays of very many kinds of data types. But this one is true. Every array index must be an integer. Visual basic arrays can start at index 0. Yes, they can. And they can also start at index 1. So both are true. Should say VBA, really. Okay, now, suppose my program contains the following dim statement, an option base 1 at the top of the module. Now remember what option base 1 does. It starts at the array elements at index 1, because you have the 2 options, index 0 and index 1. So this says started at 1, and that's the default. So, okay, how many elements does the array have? Since it starts at 1, it has 10 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's answer C. What is the largest index we can use with this array? It's B. 10. Where's the big? What is the smallest index? It's B again, 1, because of the way we set that option base. Now, if it were option base 0, the answers would be different, right? With base 0, this element would have 11. This array would have 11 elements because we would start with 0, and 0 would be the smallest one we could use. Okay, consider the following dim statement and code snippet. So we have starting at 0, and the first thing it wants to know is, after this code executes, what is the value of 2D of 2 and 3? Well, you'll notice we have a nested loop here, and we're changing the element 2, 3. When j equals 2 and k equals 3, 2 times 3 will be 6. What about 2d of 1 and 1? Well, we're going to get 1. And 2d of 0 and 0, we're going to get 0, because in each case, we're multiplying j and k. Okay. You know, I'm just about out of time on this video. I don't want to rush through this last page, so I'm going to have to do a 4th one for that page. So, I'll finish here and resume with the last page in part 4.